the negotiation table. But we are now also joined in by Sunil Subramanian, who is a market expert. Sunil, over to you. This 5-day pause, is in fact followed by a 48-hour ultimatum which was issued by Trump on Saturday, in fact, which was just around the weekend, where he threatened to obliterate Iranian power plants if they continue to, till, the Strait of Hormuz was reopened. So your reaction on, the fact that Trump is signaling a breakthrough over here through his post on Truth Social?
I think it's a welcome move. Whatever said and done, compared to the level of escalation which was happening over the weekend, I think any sign that there is a pause, I think it's a welcome step. Now, Iran has not yet responded to Mr. Trump's tweet, so we have to await their response to this. But clearly he says that he's had discussions with Iran. So back-channel diplomacy has been at work, and he has asked for got a 5-day pause to take the talks forward. Now, two things are there. The oil market has already reacted. From $112, oil has dropped to $104. So there's an $8 easing of oil prices. So clearly that's a positive sign. Now, the key factor is that what happens at the end of 5 days. So there are two ways to look at this, that Mr. Trump could be buying time to move troops into the Gulf area for the next offensive if he wants to choose. Maybe because it's a long distance away, he wants to get ready, right? So that could be a way. And then 5 days later, he'll say the talks have failed and now I'm ready to attack. So knowing Mr. Trump and his uncertainty with what he says, you will take this with a pinch of salt. But at the moment, for the next 5 days, there's a session of hostilities. We should welcome it. And one final point here, Israel has not yet said anything about this. Remember, this war was started by Israel, and they are attacking not only Iran, but they're attacking the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, this is a 5-day pause, include a pause by Israel on Hezbollah as well, or on Iran as well, we do not know. So those will get clarified over the next few hours. But end of the day, this is definitely a bit of good news, and the oil market has reacted. The stock market should reflect that. Unfortunately, it's come after today's market close. But I already see that the gift nifty is in a positive trend for tomorrow. So
right.
All in all, good news.
Right. The oil market has reacted. The stock market should react well, is what Sunil Subramanian says. Sunil, please stay on the line with us. This discussion will continue. We are slipping into a very short break right now. You don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on News Now. Well, before slipping into a short break, we found out that Donald Trump has announced a 5-day postponement of all the military strikes against Iranian power plants and the energy infrastructure. To discuss this and its impact on, the markets, we are now joined in by a market expert, Sunil Subramanian, who was with us before, slipping into a short break. Sunil Subramanian, we saw a bloodbath, in the markets this morning as, the markets opened this Monday morning. Will there be a certain relief as the markets open tomorrow?
Absolutely. I was just looking at the gift nifty and it's up 3.5%, 700 points. So clearly, and the Dow Jones futures are also up for more than 2%. So clearly, the markets which are open are receiving this well. So I think, like I said, just the two things. We need to wait for Iran's response. We need to wait for Israel's response on what they're going to do for these next 5 days, right? So I think subject to those coming in and confirmation to say that there will be a cessation of hostilities for 5 days, it gives everybody room to breathe, to think calmly and think of a negotiated settlement for this war. It's a good news. So I would say that, yes, subject to the two other counterparties also supporting this tweet by Mr. Trump, the market should recover some of the losses that today's, Black Monday delivered.
We are now also joined in by Professor Madhav Nalapat, who is the Vice Chair, Manipal Advanced Research Group. Professor, thank you so much for joining us on ET Now. We found out just, about a few minutes ago that as of March 23rd, President Donald Trump announced a 5-day postponement of all the planned military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. Your reaction to this and, what happens next after this?
Look, first of all, It's good to have some rules of the game where war is concerned, but the fact of the matter is the situation regarding Iran and the United States, and don't forget another actor, Israel, they are fairly intractable. The Iranian regime will not give up its nuclear capabilities or its nuclear prowess, and the United States as well cannot have even a smidgen of the nuclear assets which are there in Iran now, and which frankly, according to International Atomic Energy Agency, have been moved out of their old locations into new locations where the Commission has absolutely no idea where they are. So the problem is intractable. It's a good sign that there will be a 5-day pause, but I don't believe that there's going to be a lasting pause short of a decisive victory on the part of one or the other party in this conflict. Thank you.
Professor, stay with us. Just on Saturday, and I was speaking to another panelist, a few minutes ago. Just on Saturday, Donald Trump had issued an ultimatum against Iran, saying, in 48 hours, the Strait of Hormuz, if it's not reopened, Iran will face the consequences. And now, he is put on Truth Social that, there have been productive talks. What really changed in, these, less than 48 hours time period that, he's posting this on Truth Social? And what, according to you, were the carrots on the table?
The fact of the matter is that what happened was that Iran conducted strikes, the tyrannical regime Iran conducted strikes on a lot of energy facilities in the Middle East, in which the U.S. has a direct interest, either as a shareholder or in some other capacity as an ally. So I think that is what the concentrated mind very sharply in Washington, and they set a rule of the game. I don't know how long this rule is going to be kept, but again, I would like to remind you that so far as the clerical regime is concerned, it is basically remains committed to a destructionist state of Israel. And as a consequence, Israel's allies, the United States, has to mobilize against it. If a 5-day ceasefire, that's good. That's a respite. And I think we will see an early end to this conflict, maybe in some weeks. But I think unless the conflict is finally over, we cannot really talk in terms of a breakthrough. I don't believe this is a real breakthrough. And the reality of the situation is the problems are intractable.
Right.
The nuclear thing is absolutely non-negotiable.
Yeah. Now let's go on to you, Sunil. S&P futures, jumps 2.5% after Trump's post on Truth Social. Tell us after Trump's comments, and Dow futures jumps 1,000 points after Trump's truce comments. Do you look at it as a temporary relief? How are traders reacting? How should, the investor react to this?
So the first thing is that the GIFT Nifty is up 4%. That's 900 points. Okay.
Right.
So clearly the market is taking it positively. But the important point is tomorrow there could be a huge rally, not just because of the news, but because the way market ended today, there would have been a lot of shorts taken on the Nifty and the Nifty Bank and on stock futures today. So there will be a massive short covering rally tomorrow, but it may not sustain beyond that because of the large amount of shorts. So tomorrow could see a very sharp bounce back, but it will peter out over the course of the week because, like I said, we've got to see what Israel and Iran say and what happens at the end of 5 days. And if you read his tweet carefully, he has only paused the strikes against the power plants and the energy infra. Now, all of the attack was not on the military equipment of Iran. That he has not said. So there is some fine print that we need to read into. He has asked the Department of War to cease action against the power plants and energy infra. What about their attacking their missile centers? What about their attacking their nuclear storage centers? He is silent about that. So there is a little bit there that you need to pause and think as to what his real intention is here. And knowing Mr. Trump, there could be another Truth Social tweet tomorrow, which says something else. So tomorrow there will be a bounce back. But whether the rally will be sustainable depends on Israel and Iran also agreeing to a 5-day pause and then saying that all the three countries are going to come to the negotiating table to thrash out a solution. Even if that takes a few weeks, at least it's a peace move and not a war escalation move. I think those things need to follow through for any market rally to be sustainable.
There is no reaction or comment from, the Israeli government, or we don't know whether Israeli government has formally agreed to this de-escalation as well. And as you rightly mentioned, we need all the three parties on board, for like a formal breakthrough to happen in this crisis that is going on in the Middle East. But is it simply a brief relief window to move acids before a potential next wave of strikes that could happen? What's your take on this, Mr. Subramanian?
No, I think so too. I think it's a 5 days because the US is thousands of miles away. They have a limited amount of infrastructure already in the Gulf region through friendly countries. They have already moved about 3,000 to 4,000 troops through their ships. But I think they'll use these 5 days to strengthen their presence. That if it needs to go to boots on the ground, assuming these talks don't succeed, they will be much better prepared than they are. I think initially they did not expect a long-drawn war. They thought just air bombing and some naval attack would take care of it. That's clearly not the case. Iran is proving far more resilient. And for the war to succeed and to conclude, you might need boots on the ground, for which US is currently unprepared because they don't have that many troops there to carry out a frontal invasion, ground invasion, near the Iranian plateau. So, just 5 days, they will silently do that. They'll build it up because it's not like there's a solution. There's only a 5-day pause. So, definitely they will build up their resources. They'll try to evacuate American civilians away from those cities and wherever they have their camps. They'll prepare all of those things. For example, they were probably surprised by the fact that 2 of their missiles almost reached 4,000 kilometers in Diego Garcia. So they were not prepared for that level of advancement of the Iranian force. So now they will be preparing for those kind of actions. What if they put another one on Diego Garcia or a similar one on the other side of the border? So there will be obviously a lot of ground level preparation. Now, whether Iran welcomes these 5-day pause, because it's clearly giving the enemy more time to regroup and attack them. So for all you know, tomorrow Iran could say that, no, we don't agree with this tweet, in which case it's back to square one. So like I said, initial reaction, positive. A lot of short covering will come into the market and bounce it up tomorrow. But Israel and Iran's reaction is important. And like I said, Mr. Trump has only paused the attack on power plants and energy infrastructure, not on the military capabilities of Iran. So if those things are going to continue, then it's almost back to square one.
Sunil, stay with us. We are slipping into a very short break, but we'll continue this discussion on the other side of this break. Well, on News Now, we are discussing, the impact of Donald Trump's post on Truth Social and its impact on, of course, the Brent crude, the recovery of the equity. And now let's also discuss with our market expert, Sunil Subramanian, the impact on gold and silver. Precious metals saw a rally, and the kind of rally that we have seen since the start of 2026. Sunil, now that, gold has plunged 7.5%, signaling a massive shift in the investor sentiment. So, your reaction to this?
No, I think that it's not a shift in investor sentiment as much as the speculators who had driven up the gold rally, when they were also players in the equity markets. So when the equity markets corrected to meet those margin calls, they had to unwind their gold positions because they had to meet the margin calls. So this time, because normally gold is a safe haven, but gold had already run up so much. And in the current situation, with the Fed also doing a hawkish hold, you have seen U.S. interest rates go now sharply up to 4.37. They were at 4.2 levels earlier. So 15 basis points U.S. yields going up. There's a massive flight of money to the dollar. That's why the dollar index is holding strong at 99 to 100. So this flight of assets into the dollar is one. So gold is negatively correlated to the dollar. Gold was rising also because a rate cut was built into the plans, and the dollar had weakened down to 90 levels, DXY, and gold is a contra to the dollar. Now that the dollar is strengthening, then Gold then becomes the contra asset to the dollar, and the money flowing into the dollar is partly coming from gold. So unwinding of the gold positions, the speculative trading positions that had rallied the gold up, plus the shift of money into the dollar is what has caused the correction in gold prices. So that's the reason this is happening, and it will continue till the dollar will continue to strengthen at the back. So gold's position as a traditional safe haven against the war, it's because that happened in the Russia-Ukraine war onwards. But the last year's rally has been more driven by a de-dollarization exercise where sovereign wealth funds and others from other countries, emerging countries, have been pulling money on the dollar and putting it into gold. But now that the U.S. interest rates are looking up, they are trying to probably reinvest a little bit in the dollar. So to the extent there's a shift away from gold. So that's the way I would summarize the gold and silver situation.
Sunil, just today, the rupee had depreciated to an all-time low of 93.97. What is the kind of impact on, the rupee that you will see going forward, if this 5-day truce actually goes through?
No, there should be some bit of easing and stabilizing at the current levels. Otherwise, the way things were going, it was looking like, okay, it easily breach 94 and go past. And it also seems to be RBI's view that around a 93.5 to 94 is a comfortable level for the rupee. So RBI also allowed it to depreciate. So now that situation, the war is a pause, there's no immediate pressure on the rupee. So it would stabilize. But for it to strengthen, you need a far sharper correction in oil prices. See, one of the main reasons the rupee is weakening is because our import bill sharply shoots up. Oil, if you remember, was at sub-70 levels before the war. And already there's a $30 rise. It had gone to $40. So the impact on the bill, on the import bill, the trade deficit, the current account deficit, and possibly the fiscal deficit and inflation, all those combine to put pressure on the rupee. But now with oil easing about 10% down, the additional pressure on the rupee to weaken will take a pause for the next few days. At the end of this 5-day ultimatum or whatever the window that Mr. Trump has given, we will have to relook at the situation and figure it out. But right now, I see that the pressure on the rupee to further weaken is probably going to take a bit of a backseat.
Right.
Sumita here, and just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on this entire tweet that Donald Trump has posted. In fact, it has a couple of crucial elements: that cessation of hostilities over the next 5 days, till the time these talks actually go on. But can the United States be trusted at this point in time versus when the Geneva talks actually happened? And from the Iranian side, what we got was that, the talks were going rather well. So if the talks were going rather well, what was the need for Israel to actually attack Iran? How much of a trust and faith can the world really place on the United States administration, particularly President Donald Trump?
Is this question for me?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Yes. No, I think I don't think the world has a very high
Mr.
degree of
Subramanian?
trust on Mr. Hello, yes? Is this for me? Hello, is that question for me? Yeah. Okay, I'll reply now. So I'm saying that the world has a very low level of trust on Mr. Trump's tweets for quite some time. You mentioned the Geneva talk, but forget about that. 2 days back, he said that I'm going to attack the power plants and give them a 48-hour notice. And now he says talks over the last few days. So while good talks have been going on, he announces the tweet saying we'll attack the power plants. So was there really talks or no talks, or Trump's just taken a unilateral decision? This is the first question. Second is, he has worded this tweet very carefully. He's only said cessation of hostilities against the power plants and energy infra. He has not promised a cessation of hostilities against the military facilities of Iran. 2. 3 is the Iranian media is responding to this as a Trump backing down. So from their side, it's clear that there will be no special talks around this. And they are saying Mr. Trump is backing down because what Iran had threatened was that they would put floating mines across the sea and they would attack the power plants of the Gulf countries. So, in their view, their threat has forced Mr. Trump to back down. So, clearly, the credibility of Mr. Trump's tweet only lasts till the next tweet that he does. So, I think there are only short-term traders and short-term people who will react on this and take advantage. A longer-term person would wait cautiously to see whether Mr. Trump's tweet is followed up by another tweet reaffirming this. Is it followed by Israel acknowledging a 5-day pause? Is it acknowledged by Iran also saying, okay, we also will not carry through? So a lot of uncertainties are floating in the air now. So yes, for a short-term reaction, yes, the markets will be up tomorrow, both as a function of the positivity and the short covering that will occur, because today I'm sure a huge amount of shorts would have got built up because of the huge correction today. So for one day, yes, there will be relief for the markets. But nobody in the world, Western world or the emerging world, takes Mr. Trump's tweets as meaning anything than his thought as expressed by him to achieve certain goals at this point in time until the next tweet. So I don't think Mr. Trump's credibility in terms of these kind of decision making and following through as it at a very high level. So everybody would be pragmatic in their approach in handling the situation.
Right. Sunil, thank you so much for joining us and, putting a perspective to this latest post by Donald Trump calling for a 5-day truce. Well, thanks for your inputs and insights.
Thank you.
Now, the journey towards a more inclusive India requires collective effort and a shared commitment to accessibility and equality. Through Samarth by Hyundai initiative, voices from across the country are lending their support to this movement. Let's have a look at this next video